Today is July 16th, 2006. I am Jessica Clark. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Unity, Saskatchewan. To start with, can you please state your name?
And Hoffart.
And what is your maiden name?
Frehlich.
Okay. Where were you born, Anne?
In Scott, Saskatchewan.
How far is that from Tramping Lake?
Oh, about 24 miles.
Okay, so how did you get from Scott to growing up in Tramping Lake?
Well, that's where you had to go to have your to be born, because there was no hospital. The closest one was Scott.
Okay. So, was it common for children to be born in hospitals when you were growing up?
Yeah, when we grew up, they were all born in the hospital.
Okay. When were you born?
On October the 5th, 1927.
Okay. Did you ever hear any interesting or unique stories about your birth?
No, not really. Not anything out of the ordinary.
Okay. Can you start by telling me one of your earliest childhood memories?
Oh, I remember I always wanted a doll for Christmas. And finally, my mother and dad got me one, and it was in a package. We always got it from the Eaton's catalog. And when they weren't going to let me keep it because it was too small and too expensive. So I happened to, as they were taking the parcels back, I happened to get a hold of that one, and I tipped it over, and I heard it cry, "Mama." And oh boy, they had to open it up anyway, and I could see it, but it got wrapped up and put away back.
So did you ever get a doll?
Oh yes, I had lots of dolls after that. One was hanging on the wall for quite a few years, and finally you take it down and play with it.
So what did dolls look like back then? Were they...
Well, they were stuffed, and this one, its eyes opened and closed, and it cried, "Mama," when you tip it over.
Do you remember any of the other toys that you had when you were a kid?
Well, we had a carriage for put the doll in, and it's something. We had a little dog, and it ended up putting him in the carriage and wheeling him around, and he liked it.
The doll's clothes, were they homemade or?
Well, when you got them, but after that, we did make some of our own.
Okay. Would you play pretend house or?
Oh yeah, we always played upstairs. We had one spare room, and there we played with my older sisters. We play house.
Let's turn a little bit to the history of the family. On your dad's side, did your grandparents immigrate over from Russia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Odessa.
Odessa?
Mm-hmm.
What was your grandfather's name?
On my father's side, Joseph.
Joseph. And your grandmother's name?
That I don't remember because it was too far back, and then he remarried. But he was the first person buried in the Tramping Lake Cemetery.
Really?
Yeah.
And he was Joseph?
Joseph, I'm not sure the second name, Frehlich.
Okay. Did you get to know your grandfather, Joseph, at all?
No. He died quite young. He was 59.
Did he immigrate? Do you know if he immigrated from Russia to Canada or from Russia to the States then to Canada?
I couldn't say.
Okay. How about on your mother's side? Did you know those grandparents at all?
Yeah, those I knew. John was the grandfather's name.
And your grandmother?
The grandmother I don't recall because she died too when I was young.
Okay. Do you know if your grandmother's or your mother's side of the family immigrated from Russia over here?
Yes, I believe they came from the same area, I think.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about your Grandpa John?
Well, he always lived with his youngest son on the farm, and I would always go there for holidays, and they had 3 girls, and we would play together, and we all shared the same bedroom. He had a big bed, and we had a big bed. And we used to get pretty noisy, and I can remember the odd time him telling us to quiet down.
Did he ever come to your house to visit?
Oh yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, in those days it's hard to remember because it was by wagon, didn't have no cars yet.
If you had to describe your grandfather's character, what type of personality did he have?
They were very, very quiet.
Do you, how old was he when he passed away, do you know?
I'm not sure no more, but he got to be, for that time, a fair age,
Okay. Were you still a child when he passed away? Or?
Yes, I remember because he didn't have no funeral parlors yet, and they would just bring the body into the home and in the casket, and they would have ice under to keep it cool.
Really?
And then they had what you call a wake, and somebody would be there day and night until the day of the funeral. They couldn't keep him too long, not like nowadays.
What was a funeral like back then?
Well, it was pretty well along the same line, not as, what would you call it, elaborate as now, but pretty well ran the same way. Like,
Okay.
taken to the church and the mass, and then out to the cemetery.
On your father's side of the family, how many children did your grandparents have?
On my father's side, quite a few. There was that picture I said where all the Frehlichs had to be like 7 or 8 anyway. Well, like I know there was one that didn't get married, and his name was Joe. But I would say about 8.
And was your dad one of the oldest, youngest, or kind of in the middle?
Sort of in the middle, I would say, yeah.
Did you get to know any of your uncles or aunts on that side of the family at all?
I met them, and there was a few that got to know pretty good.
Did any of them live around the area when you were?
Yeah, like George, he lived in the Trenton Lake area on the farm. And Stanley, he lived in Trenton Lake too, but then he moved out to BC. So then we lost track. And Alphonse we knew good, because he had a farm not too far, right across from our farm, across the field, and we used to go over there because they had a big dam where everybody would go swimming. So we go over there to go swimming. By the time you get home running over the summer fellow, you'd be just as dirty.
Did you know how to swim when you were a kid?
Not really.
You mentioned 3 uncles. Could you tell me a little bit about George, Stanley, and Alphonse?
Well, Alphonse had a garage, and George was a farmer, and what was the other one? George, Alphonse, Stanley. Well, he moved out to BC when I was still young, so I didn't get to know just all that he did.
Did you ever go visiting at George and Alphonse's?
Yeah, we used to go there, and once my mother took us to BC to see my Uncle Stanley because They were two brothers married to two sisters. So we went there, and she was pretty sick yet then. I remember I was 5 years old, and my mother took me and my brother on the train, and oh boy, it was hard saving money. That time you had to put in a nickel to use the bathroom, and you uh, one would go in, and then you'd hold the door open so the other one could go in and use the same nickel. Yeah. And then she passed away while we were there.
So what did you think of traveling on a train when you were...
Oh, that was really something. Yeah. We enjoyed it, but I didn't know how much our mother enjoyed it.
Was that an uncommon thing for you to do back then, to travel to faraway places?
Well, it got done, and they'd usually take the youngest ones along, you know. That's how come we got to go.
The older ones had to stay behind?
Yeah.
Let's see. How did... You mentioned that your mother and one of her sisters married two brothers.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
Well, because they were both, my mother and Katie were both working with the threshing crews. And the men were in the threshing crew. So that's probably how that happened.
Okay. On your mother's side of the family, did you get to know any of your aunts and uncles pretty well on that side?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were some of them around the Tramping Lake area as well?
Well, yeah, Paul that was the youngest one. And that's where I used to go for summer holidays when grandfather lived with them.
What was Paul like?
He was a very nice person. They used to visit back and forth a lot, my mother and dad and Paul and his wife.
How far was your farm to Tramping Lake?
Just a good mile.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And do you know how many kids were in your mother's side of the family?
My brothers?
Your mother.
Oh, your mother. Well, Philip Lang's dad was my mother's brother. And then Paul. There was a Felix. He died younger. And then the two girls, I think.
Okay. So it was a smaller family.
Yeah.
Your mother, what is your mother's name?
Christina.
And what is your father's name?
Nelson.
How did your mother and father meet each other?
Well, I guess through this threshing and cooking, harvesting time.
Do you know when they got married?
No. And at that time, they just didn't take no wedding pictures.
And how long were they married for?
They didn't get that old because neither of them got to be 60 years old.
What type of a person was your mother?
She was a very nice person. She always wanted to do something for other people and for the church.
And your father?
He was very good too. He was always out ready to make a deal with somebody for that's his business, selling cars and trucks and things like that. And you take anything on trade.
How many children did they have?
There were 7 of us.
Can you take me from oldest to youngest?
Sister Beatrice and Regina, Christina, and myself. And the boys were John, Joe, and Peter. Yeah, there's just me left and my brother Peter. The rest are all gone.
What was it like growing up with a large family?
Didn't find it hard because everybody else had lots of, you knew what was your job to do and you did it.
Was there a brother or sister that you were closer to when you were a child?
Yeah, I was closer to my sister Christina. Maybe we thought alike or what, I don't know.
What types of things would you do with Christina as a little girl?
Well, we always used to, when we went to the dances, we always went together and too, so. And we did a lot of the work together, although she ended up doing more work inside the house, like cooking and baking, you know.
Let's see here. Let's talk about school for a little bit. What school did you attend?
Well, Trapman Lake School.
Okay, so you went to town to go to school. How did you get there every day?
Well, walk.
Even in the snow and the cold?
Well, then we had the sleigh. We got taken. And one day we went and we forgot our lunch pail. And at that time it was a big syrup pail like that with a handle. And so my dad brought the lunch. And the doors were open to the school when he came up the steps. And so when I saw him coming, I laughed. And we really got a good scolding for that. But we got our lunch.
What type of food would you take for lunch to school?
It was mostly homemade bread, jam bread, and apples, and pretty well the same thing. You never got no pop or juice or...
Was the school in Trapping Lake a one-room schoolhouse?
No, when I started it was 4 rooms, 2 up and 2 down. And then they had brought in another school, and that was just high school. And then later on they built the big school.
So how many grades did you complete?
I went ahead up to grade 12, but I didn't complete it.
Did you like going to school?
Yeah, I liked it.
Were you a good student?
Well, I had my subjects that I didn't like.
Such as?
Algebra and science. I wasn't too fond of science, but the other subjects I liked. Yeah. Composition I really liked. Spelling.
So 4 rooms in one school. How did they divide the school up? You know, what grade? How would that work?
Well, there was, I think, from grade 1 to 4, and then 4 to 8, and then junior high was downstairs. And then they moved in this other one that was what they call high school. Yeah. And one room downstairs was the playroom. Yeah.
So the teachers at the school you attended, were they young teachers?
They were all nuns.
Okay.
Yeah, very nice.
So it was a Catholic school that you attended? Was that the only school in Trapping Lake at the time?
Yeah. And it wasn't what you call a Catholic school because the children that went there and weren't Catholic, they would have a different room where they went to while we got our religion.
So when you were growing up in the Trapping Lake area, was it a predominantly Catholic area?
Yeah, pretty well. Mm-hmm.
What about German? Was it pretty much a German area as well?
Pretty well, too. There was a few families that weren't. Like.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about how the school day would work and what a typical day entailed for you?
Well, they were pretty well run the same way as, your subjects and your noon hour, your recess time for playing ball, and pretty well the same.
Okay. Okay. How about chores on the farm? What type of chores did you have to do growing up?
First go and get the cows and bring them home, and then milk the cows and take the milk into the house to separate and feed the chickens and gather the eggs, chop wood. Pretty well it.
Did you ever have to help with the field work at all?
Well, one time, I remember I told you about this harvesting, so, where I had to drive the tractor and didn't know enough to put it in reverse instead of going ahead.
So was that the only time you really ever had to help out in the field?
Yeah, that was pretty well. Well, I had to help shovel grain too, and you were in the granary when the auger would bring it in, and you had to make sure you shovel fast enough to get it out of the way, or you could have been left under there.
You said your aunt Christina helped more with the cooking and stuff.
Mhm.
What about the laundry and dishes and things like that? Did you
Well,
have to help with those?
Everybody, yeah, we all had to help with that, all the girls.
So can you tell me a little bit about doing laundry back then? What that was?
Yeah, because it was still started out with the tubs and the washboard. And then finally we got a machine, but, you still had to turn the wringer to put it through and into the other tub to rinse it, and then through the wringer again, so it was a long procedure.
What did you use for soap?
Homemade soap, lye, and I don't know what else went into it.
What about like bath time and stuff like that? How did that work?
We didn't have no bathtub until towards the later part, and then it was sitting in one room and you all took your turn to have your bath. A lot of times you got to use the same water.
How often would you take a bath when you were growing up?
Saturdays.
So were Saturday nights a special time, a special day of the week?
Yeah, it was, you all took your bath Saturday night, because Sunday morning, bright and early, you go to church.
And what was church like when you were growing up?
Oh, the nuns were very strict, and you didn't sit like the men and women together. The women sat on one side and the men on the other, and the kids up in front. And if you talked, sometimes you ended up kneeling up at the communion railing.
Did you go to church every Sunday when you were a child?
Far back as I can remember. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the activities, the religious activities that you participated in when you were a child?
Well, they had picnics, and a lot of times they would have, what you call a picnic after Mass, and everybody would bring something and you'd spend the day. They would play ball maybe or something like that.
What about the rosary? You want to tell me a little bit about how your family did the rosary?
We did the rosary. My dad always led the rosary, and you all had to kneel, and that was all done in German. Yeah.
When you were going to church, were the services in German?
Well, starting out they were, and then I think by the time we really knew about it, there was more. There was a lot of Latin yet, and then only the English. Yeah. Because the Mass service, they had to learn all their prayers to answer in Latin.
Can you tell me about catechism classes?
Well, those were always after school, and then when it was holiday time, July and August, there was catechism class every Saturday. in the church basement.
How long would those classes last?
Oh, 2 hours, I think, or 2 to 3 hours, depends. If there was some learning for First Communion, it would be longer, or confirmation. So,
What was First Communion like?
well, I can remember it was very nice because at that time they would have two girls, which they would call angels, and they would lead each one up, each of the ones making their First Communion. And I was an angel twice before I made my First Communion. But you got to be an angel when you were younger yet. So,
And how about confirmation? What was that like?
it was pretty well the same as communion. They had lots of training before, and you had to have your sponsors, and they would be there.
Okay. What about how we talked a little bit about Christmas and how the church celebrated Christmas, but what about Christmas Eve? I mean, how did the church celebrate?
Well, that all was started at midnight, 12 o'clock, midnight, and it would last sometimes till 2 in the morning. And then you would hurry home so you get something to eat.
What are some other holidays that the church celebrated when you were growing up?
Well, they celebrated pretty well all the feasts, that you still celebrate now, only not as big.
Can you tell me about Easter and Good Friday?
Those were always very much celebrated.
What would the church do for what did you have to do for Easter and
Well, they sometimes had a procession, and you would walk in, and there would be 4 people, I think, that would be carrying the statue of Christ risen, and you'd walk all the way up through the church, and then it would get put up on the altar. Then they all sang their hymns.
At home, did you guys have Easter eggs or any of the traditional?
Yeah, chicken colored, colored eggs. Very seldom yet you got a chocolate bunny. They just weren't to be had yet then. We used to make our nests outside the house, dig out, put some straw in.
What about names days? Were those celebrated?
Yes, those were always celebrated. My dad's and my mother's, and people would come and they would have their parties.
What type of parties would they have? What would they do?
They would always play cards. Yeah.
What type of card games were they?
I don't remember what they played then, because there used to be lots of them. And have their homemade drinks. But when there was company like that, us kids weren't allowed in that room. We were out in the kitchen or sitting on the upstairs steps listening.
What about birthdays? Were those celebrated when you were growing up?
Well, they weren't that much celebrated yet. They were recognized, but nothing big, elaborate, a party or something.
What about Canada Day, July 1st?
Those took a long time before they started that. Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of any other holidays that were celebrated when you were growing up?
I think those are pretty well all.
Okay. How about when people would make sausage or when they would do butchering? Were they communal days where people would come over?
Oh yeah, that was our Uncle John was always at our place for that, and then he would mix the sausage and everything, and then, well, today we're done. We should go home, and they get to hitch up the sleigh and go home, and oh, let's not go home yet. We'll stay another day. That's when they started relaxing, and celebrating their hard work.
Would you help with the sausage making process?
No, I was too young yet.
Where would your uncle stay when he would come over?
We had our house was big on the farm, like probably in one of the bedrooms.
Can we talk a little bit about the dances that you've mentioned a couple of times?
Well, there were nothing. They were mostly local orchestras and kind of music you liked then, and they mixed real well, everybody, so.
Where were they held at?
Either at Broadacres or Revenue Hall.
Okay. And how often would they have these dances?
Pretty well once a month. Yeah.
When you were going to school, was there such a thing as like homecoming or prom or things like that, those school dances?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We talked a little bit about this during the photo album tour, but maybe we can touch on it a little bit more. How you met your husband and started dating. You want to talk a little bit about?
Well, that was through these dances, and because he lived across the street from where my brother had the store, and I used to sometimes come home from school and help in the store yet till I had to go home to the farm. That's how we met.
Okay. And what about weddings? What are some of the traditions of weddings that you experienced throughout your childhood?
Well, those were always the church. You'd be at the church by 10 o'clock, and then a luncheon at the home of the bride, and then you go to Wilkie to get your pictures taken, then back, and then they had a supper, and then a dance at the school.
So it was a full day of events.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll ask a couple concluding questions, and then we'll switch you and put your husband on the hot spot.
Okay.
What was one of your most adventurous what is one of your most adventurous childhood memories?
Oh, like going to the lake. And my parents always went to the lake, and they would take my uncle and aunt along. And being that I was the youngest, I always got to go along. Kind of looked forward to it. They always went fishing. Yeah.
What was the scariest time in your childhood?
Well, I was scared the time my brother upset the closed-in sleigh and the horses ran away. That was pretty scary.
And how about the happiest time in your childhood?
Well, there was always the good things that were done for you. Yeah. Saturday nights you'd always go to town because the stores would be open and you'd get a treat.
Okay. Is there anything else about your childhood you would like to tell us today?
No, I'm just glad that I am where I am. When they thought when I was 12 years old that I wouldn't send me home because that was it. And to be around now yet is pretty something to be thankful for. Yeah.
Why did you want to participate in this project today?
What do you mean, like?
Like, why did you want to record your history?
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it was done up until our parents, and so we thought, well, maybe if we go in again, it'll go up till to our families now.
That's a great reason. Well, we thank you
Yeah.
for having us